Thank you everyone for coming. I know it's a Saturday morning, it's a really nice sunny autumn morning, and I'm really happy to see you here in so many. So, how many of you ever went to a bar, ordered, let's say, a Coca-Cola, but you got a Pepsi? And turn on the clicker. I hate when that happens to me. But maybe you're a vegetarian, some of your friends or family are vegetarians, and they offer you fish, which in Croatian culture, meat is not fish. In a lot of other cultures, it is. So it's a bit different. So let's maybe look at some job ads. Who remembers a Rockstar developer? Who here is a Rockstar developer? Wow, really? Shit. Because whenever I see that kind of a job ad, this is what I think of. Great. So I'm going to be on this part of the stage. Like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? That's probably not the environment that I want to work in. Some companies want ninja developers. So it's somewhat funny when it's a small company. I can even understand that they want somebody to handle everything. And that's okay, but what when it's a big company? So they want people that will do the job and not talk to anybody? Like, that's the wrong culture for me, because unless this is the only example of any ninjas that worked in a team, right? Another funny one is a rather new one, a DevOps engineer. So why is it funny for me? Because DevOps is a culture. It's a culture of developers talking and working with operations, which is something that we as developers really don't like. And people from operations, those developers. So what's the engineer here? Like, does that mean that I'm an Agile developer because I use Agile? It's a culture. Some of you might say, well, DevOps has tooling. I'm going to tell you we have Jira. So let's nitpick some terminology and let's see are we using the right terms. My name is Miro Svrtan. You can find me on Twitter using this handle. So before I continue, first and foremost, this talk was not meant as a talk. I wanted to do it as a conversation. And I have tried doing it as a conversation twice. As trying to talk and have a conversation with 400, 500 people is a pretty bad idea. Join me in the Uncom track after the break, and let's discuss, let's nitpick together. If you have any comments, anything to say, anything, just come at 11:35, let's have a discussion. So why is this terminology so important to me? Humans are social beings. We have to communicate with not only peoples, but everything. I mean, without any communications, you could not have been here. Because if nothing, you had to interact with the computer, right? Just click the buy button for the ticket. Or tell somebody, I want to go to a conference, right? So we communicate all day. And if we use different terminology that for some means A, for some people means B, that's bad. That's really bad. And I'm not saying that I'm right and you're wrong in some of it, but from domain-driven design, I found ubiquitous language to be a really nice trait. Because the idea of the whole company using the same verbs is really important. I mean, you do know that only drug dealers and developers have users. Everybody else has customers, right? So if you talk to your business about users, unless you are working for drug dealers, that's going to be some confusion, right? Why can't we have maybe not completely ubiquitous language in tech? Let's look at Agile. Agile is a rather old methodology. I think it's been here for like 30 years or something, and it was built as an idea of not doing too much design up front. Because if you have to build a big software system or anything, it might take a few years of planning. And by the time the waterfall planning goes through, business might have changed completely. So the idea was, let's have short interactions. Let's speed things up. And the group that came up with the Agile as an idea also posted an Agile manifesto. It has 4 bullet points, or 4 ideas. And the first one is, for me, probably the most important one, and that's individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So just to give you an example, I spoke to a company that has some outsourced developers. They're really partners, they're really happy working together, and they moved from Waterfall to Agile some years ago. But the business is not happy how Agile is going. And they wanted to change things around because it just doesn't fit their demands, their needs. And I think that we as developers and designers often forget that we are not there for ourselves. We are there to solve people's problems, business problems. And the response from the outsourcing company was, well, we switched to Agile, this is the way we work, and here's a book, read it. And move your business process to what the book says. So somebody who learned Agile forgot the first principle of Agile: interactions over processes, individuals over tools. That means that every company, every team, every product is going to have a different Agile setup, and that's okay. Even if you're inside the same company, maybe even in the same office, but you're not the same team. You're maybe not working on the same part of the product or for something. You should find the things that suit you best. Not only you as a team, but you, the business, and everybody in the ecosystem. Second one is, let's have working software over a whole bunch of documentation. Because, as I said, in Waterfall, the idea is spend a lot of time writing documentation, which probably works for highly regulated things. I mean, I really do hope that nobody's building a nuclear plant using Agile. And customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I mean, those developers that I mentioned a few minutes ago came with, this book is our contract, do it. I'm not talking about business contract between 2 companies. They told business, this is the book, this is the way we have to do it. The third one says, no, collaborate with the customer, collaborate with the business. And as we know that only sure thing in life is change, we should be responding to them, not have a plan. I'm not trying to say that plans have no value. Well, I heard a really good talk a few weeks ago where a speaker said, plans are shit, but planning is valuable. And that's actually true. So what often happens is people don't understand why, they just decide to replicate something they have seen somewhere. So for instance, a really big tech company decided to offer free lunch to all of their employees. I don't know if you remember that shitstorm on the internet. Because everybody came with the idea, yeah, they want to keep their people all day in the office. I spoke to a friend that works in that company, and he said, people misunderstood the whole idea. It's not about keeping people in. We mostly hire workaholics. We mostly hire the best people in the world. They want to be working. They want to build that new shiny thing that's going to change the world. We don't have to keep them in the office. The idea of free lunch is to reduce the cognitive load so that all of their employees don't have to go and think like, where are we going for lunch? Who's going to join me? Then when you go to lunch, what are we going to order? What should I eat today? So the idea was that, hey, inside of the company, there's a restaurant. They have 6 to 7 different meals. You can eat pretty healthy. You don't have to think about paying, about what you're going to eat. And you can meet up other colleagues. Unfortunately, I'm going to say you can also talk about the job, but because you're inside the company, so you have a bit more freedom about secrecy, which I find, and I really do hope that people don't do, but yeah, it's about cognitive load. Another more technical example are microservices. Another big tech giant, big tech company came out a few years ago and said, we have everything in microservices. How did the internet respond? We're doing them too as well. We have no idea why did you do them, but we're going to do them as well. We are a 5-person team, but we're going to do microservices. Because if it fits that big company, it should work for us too. Just to try to explain to you that your products probably will never have the traffic or of that company. Probably never. It's really rare that you're going to work in a company that has 2,000 engineers, right? So they needed it for scalability, but not of the computer power, of the server power, but for scaling people too. What others decided to do, it was good for them, we should do it as well. And that's what people often do with some agile recipes, like Kanban. Kanban is a really good tool if you're trying to measure your output. And what's an output? So the idea of Kanban came from Toyota manufacturing. They wanted to track and find the bottlenecks in their production line for cars, to know where they need more people, where they have too many people, to try to streamline the whole production. Do you need that? Maybe. Maybe you work in a high-output team that has a lot of clients, where you have sales that have leads that convert those to future clients. Then you have designers that work on the design of the site. Then you have developers as a separate pipe that make it live. Then you put it on test where customers say, yeah, this is okay. Then you launch it to production. Then you go to maintenance. And because those are so different pipes, it might make sense for you to track it using Kanban. If you're a product team, I'm not so sure. I would rather suggest looking at Scrum, but maybe it will not fit you right. Again, it's a recipe. The idea of Scrum is, again, cut things down into smaller sprints. They should usually be something like 2 to 3 weeks. Some people do it longer, some people do it shorter, but one thing that I noticed is that people stick to sprint length. If they set 2 weeks at the start, it's going to be 2 weeks forever. Which is a bit wrong, because the whole idea of Scrum is to have, after a sprint, working software. Not dev and test environment and databases set up. Something that the client can come and see. Maybe the whole site or the checkout process or registration doesn't have to work perfectly, but it should work in the scope that you talked to the business that it should have. Some years ago, I applied for a job, and I did a Skype with a recruiter, and after they introduced themselves, talked about the company, and before it was my turn, they said, hey, do you have any experience with Scrum? And I said, no, unfortunately, I don't. Because I usually do Agile, but I usually have a hacky way of doing Agile. And they said, okay, then let's stop this conversation. We're looking for people with Scrum experience. I was like, what, why? Why is Scrum so important in your company? I would really love to know. We can stop the interview, but I'm really interested in why. And they explained to me that it's the way of company. I said, okay, so how long are your sprints? 1 week. That's a bit strange, but okay, does it work for you? Yes. Okay, so how long are your retrospectives and your planning then? Like they're really short because it's a week sprint. Yeah, they are pretty short, like 4 to 6 hours. Oh, for all of it? No, just for planning, we don't do retros. Wait, but the point of sprint is that retro, getting the feedback loop. That's the Agile, getting the feedback loop. Yeah, we don't need that. Okay, so how is your Scrum Master supporting such long planning sessions? Oh, we don't have Scrum Master. But who's then moderating the talk? Well, the product owner. Oh, wow, that's a really bad idea because they tend to speak a lot about things that nobody cares about their business. Oh, no, it's not a problem. Product owner is from our company. Wait, what? So the product owner cannot bring a decision, right? Because they don't own the business. I mean, good product owners do have stakeholders, but have the power to say yes or no. In some cases, maybe let me get back for some detail, but they have the power of saying yes and no. So this seemed completely crazy idea, and I said, okay, thank you for the chat, let's go further. And I feel that a lot of that happened as project managers started losing their jobs. Because Agile is getting so familiar and so popular to everyone, and nowhere in Agile there's a term called project manager. There are product owners, there are maybe product managers, but project managers never. So even a few years ago, about 2014, one of the certifications added Agile as one of the topics to get certified, which was pretty interesting because in Croatia, at least in web, most of the project managers are not certified. Okay, maybe they don't need it. I do feel that it's maybe not needed because in my head, a project manager is a person that's coming from that domain, that understands the problem that you're trying to solve. So if you have, I don't believe that project manager can build railways, airplanes, and software. I just don't believe in that. I think that they have to have the background in the industry, have the understanding of the industry. What in Croatia, actually, project managers are one step away from telco customer support. You know, when your mobile phone isn't working and you're complaining. That's about it. Sorry to all the project managers here, but I've spoke to more than a few developers, and a lot of them seen it. Because developers hate doing non-developer stuff. We hate to automate it. So teams get managers to handle things like, hey, can we have a meeting at some point? You put a manager in. I don't like the idea. I would love to discuss why is it so needed. So join me later. And then we come to the term that's probably the most important for me in this whole talk. It's the team. It's the idea of the team. It's the culture of the team. What is the team? We often confuse teams with clubs, teams with groups, teams with a lot of other things. So, yeah, 2 clubs are going to play a soccer match. But actually, there are 2 teams. And those two teams have approximately maybe 20 people, 11 players on the pitch, 5 or 6 substitutes, few coaches, a physician, some additional staff that's sitting near the pitch. They all play for the same goal, getting the best result in next 90 to 120 minutes. Is that winning, or maybe if you're playing against a much stronger team, losing as least as you can? But they have a common goal. They play together. Yes, they do have sub-teams. Those 11 on the pitch are sub-team. And then you might also have defenders. You might have midfielders. You might have scorers. There's some kind of a sub-team as well, but they all play together. Look at the pitch. You can have few designers, few front-end developers, few back-end developers, maybe some DevOps people there. They might be a team, but they should have the same goal on that project. I know of companies in Zagreb that would create a team out of one backend, one frontend, and one mobile developer, which don't sit together, which are not often even on the same floor of the building. Thank God they started changing it, and when I heard that they decided, yes, teams should work together, they started using their conference rooms as places where those people will work together, so that they can communicate quickly. When somebody needs an API change, they just say, hey, can you add this to API? Yes, here it is. It works. They're extremely fast. And of course, depending on the teams, the needs, and everything else, just like in team sports, there's going to be different cohesions. All 4 of them have to pedal at the same rate, exactly same rate. Not a bit quicker, not a bit slower than the other 3, each of them. Sorry. If you put, if somebody leaves the team and you put another person in that cannot pedal at that speed, that team is going to be worse off than not having that person in. Because those 3 are going to be faster than those 4. Probably rules do not allow for those changes, but think about your teams. Just adding people on can be a burden, can be a big burden, especially if you don't fit well. Culture is getting in. If you look at the Croatian national team, the ski national team, I don't see them as a team. I just don't see them as a team. They do travel together. They sleep in the same hotels. They practice together. They have same coaches, same doctors, same physicians, same drivers, a lot. But each has his or her own race. They are not dependent one on another. They can motivate each other, but in honesty, they don't really care that much about the other result. I do hope that they are much more friendlier than that, but yeah. And if you want to look at something that is really strong about the team, I'm going to give you a minute. So those 2 are supposed to be a team. And we can call them teams. I'm fine. They have same goals. But do you notice how those 4 or 5 of them in white jerseys are just rushing for that guy with a eggy ball? You see? You're not passing us. It's a team effort that you're not going to go through. I look at those cowards in the yellow pants. No. We're not going to help you. We don't care about you. Look, if they played like a team, this probably wouldn't have happened, right? Of course, a great individual from time to time can avoid the whole team if they are extremely fast or something, but team effort is that thing that's really important, that can get you far. And Croatians don't like working in teams. It might be related to not understanding the differences between team leads and team managers. My ex-colleague, who is Dutch, was here 2 years ago on this stage talking about what happened, what was the unexpected part of him being a team lead. And I watched the video before the conference, because he has done it a few times. My first and only question on the whole talk, I really loved it, was, but that's not a team lead position. That's purely managerial position, because you were not down in the trenches with your developers and designers. You were managing the paperwork, the team, all the other things. Great job, you have done it well, but it's a completely wrong title. And he said, yeah, probably true. So what if you see a really nice ad in a company that you would like to work for, and it says, we're looking for a team lead or team manager, but it's the other way around? What if you don't know what your promotion inside of your own company is going to mean? I mean, it doesn't mean, don't confuse titles, the roles in the team, with skills. Leading a team needs leadership, but it does need some managerial skills as well. Just like managers do have to have some leadership skills, because otherwise nobody's going to listen to them. Managers should be opening your doors. They are in charge of strategy. Team leads are in charge of tactics. Completely different roles. Of course, in smaller companies, people have to wear more than one hat, which is understandable. But please, don't be a team lead that's all day in Excel. But from that culture, one of the things that I noticed as well is the title acceleration. How many senior developers are here? Really? How many senior developers and above? Okay, very interesting. I'm used to much higher percentages. So let's look at the path of a recent university graduate. He or she finished university this year. They're going to get a great job in a company by becoming a junior developer or junior engineer. They have done an amazing job. They're really good. Company decides to promote them to a mid-developer or mid-engineer just next year, because they have been so good. And they want to actually pay them a bit more, because otherwise they might leave. In a year, they have to become a senior, because otherwise they can't pay you more and you're going to leave. A year passes, you become a junior architect, a mid-architect, a senior architect. And just to know, I invented those 3 titles just to get some years in. You might become a principal engineer at 30, which is amazing. But how many juniors can become principal engineers in 6 years? Do you need hundreds of principal engineers? No. People will have to leave the company because they don't see where the path is going. Because if the title above them is taken, they have to find a new team or a new company. You're losing good people because of the titles. Companies should not say, we cannot give you a raise. Raises come with new titles. because that's a blockage. I know for some of you, please don't feel, I don't want to be an asshole. I really don't want to be. And I'm the first one to understand the instant gratification. But if you're on this path, it's going to end terrible for you. Because by creation law, you have about 35-year gap between principal engineer and pension. How are you going to fill it up? I mean, let's look at another situation. Do you, as a senior developer, or senior engineer, or senior designer, do you want to go to another company for a junior position? Because that company has a bit of a different scale of years? Nobody wants to go downstairs, right? So you're probably going to be trying to find a position in another company that would be a step forward, which might not be a good fit, but that's the only open position. Because if you look at the hierarchy, there are much less architects than there are developers. There are not as many principal engineers as there are architects. By Malcolm Gladwell's definition, it takes about 10,000 hours to master a skill. If you look at that as an 8-hour day, it's about 5 years. In my opinion, a senior developer should be a master of his or her skill. Some of you might say that the mid should be that. I'm not going to argue. It might work as well. Then seniority brings other traits. 2 years is just not close enough. And that brings us to job hopping. And a lot of people looking at good, bad code. Because they become technical persons. Because in order to do anything, they have to be better at technical stuff. So, as the next positions are not as coming often, you sometimes have to push down your colleagues and teach them how things are done so that you would get promoted, then they wouldn't. And good, bad code is really a good example of it from that side. But also, we all want to write perfect code, right? Have perfect design, have everything done perfect, because we're technical. I'm going to tell you that no business thinks they're perfect. They don't want perfect. A lot of businesses will say perfect is the biggest enemy of good. We just want to be good, not perfect. So let's look at your personal life as your business, because you have to manage some money and stuff like that, right? So if you expect to build perfect code for your perfect clients, how many of you are driving something like this? Please raise your hands. Zoka. Okay. Some people are trying to troll me. Thank you, Luca. Because of you, I changed the cars, and there's one more appropriate for you, who has something like this. Okay, few hands. Something like this. One hand. Something like this. Oh, see, a lot of hands. Where were your hands till now? So why should business spend enormous amounts of money on things that they don't need, but you don't spend enormous amounts of money on things that you don't need? And how many have something like this or better? And I'm not talking about shitty old car. I mean, it has nothing to do with age, because this is much older than the Uno, and it costs about $500,000. So it's not everything about the age. So code, just like a design, is in the eye of the beholder. How you see it. And code reviews are something that should clean that up. Code reviews are not about shipping perfect code, even good. It doesn't have to be good. It has to be whatever team is happy with. Because if you're looking at my pull request, my merge request, by saying thumbs up, you get to own that code as well. It's your code as well. You said that if anything happens to you, Miro, I can help you out. I own that code as well. I see a lot of companies where team leads or team managers are those that have to approve pull requests. In my mind, it's peer reviews. Your peers should be doing it, not somebody above you. They can join in, of course, but they should not be the single point of failure because they have a lot of other tasks. I've heard of companies where a friend of mine had 15 pull requests because his manager just didn't have the time to look at them. It's demotivating to work like that because who wants to produce a 16th pull request because you know you're going to get back to some of them, and it's demotivating. Try to engage your teammates to help you out. For the designers in the audience, sorry, I have a few technical slides coming up. Don't run away yet. A lot of developers, engineers, my colleagues, me included, when they heard first about the single responsibility principle, were completely confused by it. I've seen a lot of developers that created classes that do one thing, like literally return something, one thing, because single responsibility principle says there should be only one reason to change a class, which means that you get into Java world of having millions of classes, which is not that happy thought, at least for me. And the idea of single responsibility principle as one reason for change is one role in your company that can give you a decision on the change. So I'm going to use Uncle Bob's example. Before the single responsibility principle came on, let's say you have a big company and you have a class called employee. It would hold some data about the employees, something that the legal team would say, by law in this country, we need this information. Code would also be in charge of saving itself, saving the data to a database. And the CTO is the person that's going to say which database you use. But the employee class would also know how to calculate your current wage, which is something that probably somebody from finances say, hey, this is the formula that we're using. And let's say that the chief financial officer needs a report. So developers would put in to that class a snippet of UI for easily showing data in the reports. So what happens when a developer screws up, does a small typo in the report? Nobody can save new employees. Nobody can add new employees. Nobody can calculate the wage. So nobody's going to get paid. Should a change from CTO influence finances? If you change a database, should you get a different wage? So, single reason is the role in the company. Role in the company. Not the person. Role in the company. Because you have to think as well that in smaller companies, same person might be wearing multiple hats. because a CEO might be a CFO as well. CEO might be a CTO as well, now. But in 5 years, if the company grows, those two roles will become two people, maybe on two departments. Separation of concerns, on the other hand, is to be honest, a badly named idea. It should be separation of features or something like that. Because the idea is that we should be able to easily add new features and remove them out. So if I give you a goal of deleting a feature from your project in one click, how many of you could do it? 1, 2, 3, really? We're gonna talk because I don't believe you. I mean, let's build a simple e-commerce site. You can register using your email, you can register using any of the social networks. Business comes and says, hey, from now on, you cannot register using email. We want only social media. How much time would it take you to remove that feature? 5 minutes, anybody? Half an hour? Hour? Months? So that's the idea, that different things should not be influenced by others, so that we can easily add features, but as well remove them out. I know probably never a web shop is going to, in e-commerce site is going to remove the email registration, but it's just an example. So it's completely different ideas of those two. Completely different mindsets of those two principles. Please take them as guidelines. Do not try to build everything using single responsibility principle and separation of concerns, because it's going to be a big mess. It's a nice target to have, but if you put it as a rule, I think it's going to be a really, really messy solution. You're not going to see the forest from the trees. If you're interested in more details about single responsibility principle, there's a really good talk by Uncle Bob. I suggest watching it. And dry principle is another really, really nice concept. Do not repeat yourself. So, if we talk about registration to an e-commerce site, registration by email, you might have two different types of customers. Me as a private citizen, and somebody as a company. It's usually much more than an if you select a company that it should offer few more fields. The business sees those two types of customers completely different. So should they be handled by the same form, by the same controller, by same logic? Just put an if. Could be. But I've seen projects where they had it separated, and because the code looked pretty similar, they decided to put it all together because it was a don't repeat yourself violation. No. Don't repeat yourself is don't repeat the logic. Registering a private person and registering a company is not the same. It will look the same for like 90% of it, but it's not the same. Remember, if you want to remove company registration and separation of concerns, if you implement it, how easily you can do it. With a click of a button or few. Some time ago, Croatian government decided to change hard-coded VAT from 22% to 23%, which was a complete shitstorm because everybody thought 22% is going to be here forever. Everybody hard-coded 22% into their systems. Everybody. It wasn't just me. So they decided that on something like 1st July or 1st of January, they're going to change the VAT. So I had to change the code and add ifs. If the invoice is before this date, this is the VAT, otherwise the second one. And as much as you think that trying to find 22 in your code is really easy, I missed a few places. And it's the idea of dry principle. Do not calculate things like VAT on 5 different places, because you have to keep and maintain those 5 places. And yes, searching for 22 seems, how could you miss it? But it happened. How do you feel about this word? Who loves it? Who hates it? The ones that never raised a hand, okay? Mixed feelings, that's an interesting one. So that's the first time that I get mixed feelings on the legacy. Because, to be honest, I sometimes hate the idea. But this is legacy as well. This is one of the legacies of New York, why tourists go there. Why a town is earning millions or billions, because we shouldn't be ashamed of legacy. Maybe sometimes we should embrace it. Which city is this in? No, it's not a trick question. It's not Las Vegas. That's why I used the wide shot. So you see, legacy made us all know that this is a landmark in Paris. When this was a greenfield project, citizens of Paris hated it. They wanted it to be torn down because it was a metal something monster. Millions of people are now going there to see it, to watch it, to go all the way up. So should we be hating legacy? I think we should maybe rethink our ways, because sometimes we, and by we, I, do complain about business not knowing what they want. Anybody like that? Thank you. So, but I hate working on legacy projects as well, because it's so it's really hard. So I'm a bit older than some of you. I started appreciating legacy because I'm not always able to handle all the startup life things with change direction every 2 days and just not being able to ship anything out. But what I see is we want to know what the business wants, and we want to do it in greenfield. People, it wouldn't be greenfield if they knew what they want. They would already have it built. I mean, it's 2018. Software already exists long enough that there's nothing new to an existing problem, more or less. So if you want the certainty of what software has to do, go for a legacy project. Some are really nice. Not all of them. Some are really nice, and you can learn a lot from them. If you want new and exciting, go for greenfield. But be ready to run fast, often, and change directions. But a lot of people talking about architecture, software architecture, tend to compare software with buildings, just like I did. Buildings often don't change. They might get new paint, maybe few movable walls moved around, but nobody builds a 50-story skyscraper and when they need twice as much, they add another 50 floors. They just built another one. But software is constantly changing, every day, every day. And if you look at the most popular buildings that have actually changed throughout their life, anybody knows this building? Thank you. So this is currently a museum. It's located in Istanbul. 1,500 years ago, this was a Greek Orthodox church. Then it became a Roman Catholic church. Then it became a mosque, and those pillars were added. I'm sorry, I don't know the English name. And about 8 years ago, it became a museum. 1,500 years, and it has only once changed, because in the first 3 instances, it was actually still a place of religious worship. So it has not changed that much. Even becoming a museum is not that much of a change. How much has the software changed in 15 years? Not 1,500, 15 years. So trying to build perfect software for next 1,500 years is, sorry, a terrible idea. If you want to compare buildings to software, use airports. That's a complete shit show. Like, they really don't care about user experience. I love Schiphol in Amsterdam, one of the best airports in the world, yet I have to walk 20 minutes from one gate to another, which is nice when I have 30 minutes between flights. In Frankfurt, I had to walk about 35 minutes from Terminal 1 to Terminal 2, or Terminal A, Terminal B. Yeah. And if you ever went to Charles de Gaulle, I'm really sorry. And some of the decisions come out of problems called technical debt. But people tend to try to explain technical debt as financial debt. And I like that explanation because I think that you accrue technical debt by taking shortcuts. So when I wanted my own flat, I didn't have the money. I went to a bank, got a mortgage, and I'm paying them off with interest, a lot of it. But I do have my own apartment. Some of you got a loan for a car because you didn't have enough money to get one now, and you couldn't have waited those 3, 5, 7 years to get a new one, right? So you pay some interest on it. Technical debt, in my mind, is the same thing. If you take a conscious shortcut to get shit done, that's technical debt. If you're not taking a conscious shortcut, that cannot be technical debt, because you were not aware of making a shortcut. I mean, I still don't know anybody who just tripped and got a loan in a bank or a mortgage, but okay, it might happen. But what we keep forgetting is digital rot. Some of you might have been wondering, what are these bananas here for? So, these are pretty nice looking bananas, right? Probably pretty tasty, if somebody wants to try out and give some feedback. But if I leave them here for 2 months, who's coming back to eat them? Anybody? They're going to be nice, ripe, black, with life of its own. But that's the same thing with digital. Yes, bits and bytes are unchanged, are not changed, but the environment around it changes constantly. I mean, bananas are not going to rot because of the bananas. They're going to rot because of the environment. Probably if we put them in like 0 Celsius or freeze them or something, they might not change. I'm not a biologist, sorry. But it's the same thing with software. If you don't maintain it, if you don't take care of it, the environment is going to destroy it. I know companies that had to move software that nobody knew that they had for 15 years. And they decided to move from one data center to another. And I have no idea how they did it, because the language that they are using is not compilable anymore, well, the version. The OS that supported it is nowhere to be found anymore, and that old version of the OS cannot run on new hardware. What's going to happen with all the ATMs running Windows XP? In 100 years, who's going to find a PC from 2000 that would work so that you can still run them in Windows 95, Windows XP, whatever it was? Yes, everything rots. Maybe the code doesn't change, but the environment does. And I think that a lot of technical debt, what people think about technical debt, is actually digital rot. Because they don't understand that it was a perfect code when it was built. Let's call it perfect code, good enough code, but it's not anymore. So we need to fix our terminology so we can communicate more easily. So let's nitpick together in like 20 minutes in the Uncon track. Thank you all.